peace through strength. South Korea's president has stressed that peace that depends on goodwill from a counterpart is unsustainable. He also ordered an overwhelming response capability to counter North Korea's threats. Seoul says that tighter test rules on travelers from China are inevitable for the public's health and safety, while Beijing slaps more restrictions on Korean nationals with transit visa exemptions. Detailed discussions on the lifting of the indoor mask mandate in South Korea will begin next Tuesday. Thousands of flight delays and cancellations in the U.S. after a technical glitch at the Federal Aviation Administration. The White House says that there is no evidence of a cyber attack, while the investigation into the cause is ongoing. Good morning. Peace through strength is what President Yoon Suk Yeol has highlighted to his military. He's also called for closer security cooperation with the nation's key ally. Our top office bureau chief Moon Gun-young starts us off.
Any attack on South Korea should be met with overwhelming response. President Yoon Suk Yeol to his defense chief during this year's Foreign Affairs and Defense Ministry's New Year policy briefing on Wednesday.
가짜 평화에 기댄 나라들은 역사적으로 지속 가능하지 않고 다 사라졌습니다. 늘 어떤 안보 대비 태세를 확고히 하는 힘에 의한 평화를 추구한 그런 국가들은 지금까지 역사상 사라지지 않고
This is based on the South Korean commander-in-chief's strong belief that peace that relies on the other side's good intentions is neither sustainable nor genuine. Seoul's top office said President Yoon also instructed his military to boost cooperation with the U.S. in all parts of the extended deterrence and strengthen Seoul's three-axis defense system in order to more effectively deter North Korea's growing threats. Now, this is in line with his interview with the Associated Press published earlier in the day, where Mr. Yoon reiterated his call for closer security cooperation with the U.S. and Japan to counter the, quote, dangerous situation being created by North Korea, as he played down the prospect for direct negotiations like those pursued by his liberal predecessor. When asked to clarify his recent remarks regarding discussions with the U.S. on joint exercises potentially involving U.S. nuclear assets, the South Korean leader said the proposed plans include tabletop exercises, computer simulations, and drills on delivering means for nuclear weapons, as both countries are exposed to the North Korean nuclear threat.
이제 더 문제가 심각해져가지고 여기 대한민국에 무슨 전술핵 배치를 한다든지 우리 자신이 그 자체 핵을 보유할 수도 있습니다.
Some in the academia say this president likely wants to stress efforts to boost the viability of its ally of 70 years U.S. security commitment to protect Seoul from Pyongyang. The South Korea-U.S. security alliance was formed in October of 1953 with the signing of the Mutual Defense Treaty and has so far demonstrated success by both its longevity and its ability to maintain peace on the Korean peninsula. Marking 70 years of alliance this year, the South Korean government says Yoon's visit to the U.S. is in the works. Moon Gun-young, Arirang News.
South Korea's Disease Control Authority plans to begin discussions on lifting the indoor mask mandate next Tuesday. The authority announced Wednesday that the National Advisory Committee on Infectious Disease Crisis Response will hold talks next week to adjust indoor mask guidelines. An official from the committee said the discussion is needed because although South Korea is seeing a steady drop in COVID-19 infections, variables still remain due to a surge in cases in China. Meanwhile, South Korea has been seeing a decrease in newly confirmed cases for the past 2 weeks. 54,343 cases were reported Wednesday, the lowest for a Wednesday in 11 weeks. 10 members of South Korea's ruling and opposition parties from the Korea-Japan Parliamentarians Union will leave for Japan on Thursday. During the 3-day trip, the South Korean delegation will meet with Korean residents in Japan, and the Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary. On the first day of their visit, they'll attend a welcome dinner hosted by the central headquarters of Dainichi Koreans. On day 2, delegates are expected to discuss solutions to the pending forced labor issue with their Japanese counterparts. They'll return to South Korea on Saturday. Thousands of flight delays and cancellations in the U.S. after a technical glitch at the Federal Aviation Administration. The cause of the system failure is yet to be known. Our Lee Jung-jae has the details.
The Federal Aviation Administration announced Wednesday that it has lifted its ground stop on all U.S. flights after a nationwide system failure. Of the 21,000 flights scheduled in the U.S. on Wednesday, more than 3,700 were delayed and more than 600 were canceled. While the agency says it's continuing to look into the cause of the initial problem, it said that a malfunction in the Notice to All Air Missions, or NOTAM system, was behind the 90-minute-long ground stop. Officials say the current assessment is that the failure was the result of a glitch and not something intentional. However, all possibilities are being looked at to ensure that FAA systems were not breached. The NOTAM system is responsible for sending out flight hazards and real-time restrictions to pilots. In response to the outage, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said President Joe Biden was briefed by the Secretary of Transportation. She said while there is no evidence of a cyber attack, President Biden directed the Department of Transportation to conduct a full investigation into the cause. One FAA official said that the system that had failed was overdue for replacement, with many calling for aviation system upgrades. Lee Jung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea took big steps on interest rates last year in a bid to fight inflation and to deal with the Korean won's sharp depreciation against the U.S. dollar. Now, the Bank of Korea this week is set to hold its very first policy meeting of the new year. To discuss what we can expect, we now turn to Professor Kim Se-hwan at Ewha Women's University. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Good morning. So let's start with the first question. Many analysts believe that the central bank will raise its key rate by a smaller margin of 25 basis points for the new year. Now, what's your outlook for the Friday's policy meeting and also for the rest of the year?
Well, I pretty much agree with market's expectation that Bank of Korea raises base interest rate by 25 basis points tomorrow, which makes the base interest rate 3.5%. Two major reasons for this small base interest rate hikes are weakening inflation and large base interest gap between Korea and U.S. It looks that Korean economy has passed the peak of the inflation around the end of last year. Annual inflation was 6.3% in July last year, but it decreased down to 5% in November last year. Also, the base interest rate gap between Korea and U.S. is rather large at 1.25% as of now. So Bank of Korea has some burden to stabilize $1 exchange rate with this base interest rate gap between U.S. and Korea. So they will raise the base interest rate at minimum with 25 basis points this time. This year, Bank of Korea can increase base interest rates once or twice by 25 basis points. But Bank of Korea is likely to cut its base rate around the end of this year.
Sure. And along with the policy briefing on a Friday, the central bank will also release its economic outlook for the country. Now, the growth is currently forecast at 2.1% for 2023. Will Friday's outlook be any different?
Bank of Korea will cut its 2023 Korean economic growth forecast down to 1% level tomorrow. Actually, all major economic institutions, including Korean governments, are expecting that Korean economic growth will be slower this year at 1% level growth. Recently, Korean government has released its economic growth forecast at 1.6% on year. The OECD estimates Korea's economic growth to grow 1.8%, while the IMF forecasts 2% growth for this year. As the twin engines of Korean economy, exports and private spending falter amid global economic slowdown, Korean economy could face a mild recession in 2023.
Sure, the policy briefing meeting and the economic outlook are something that we have to keep a close eye on because they really set the economic mood for the new year. Now, let's talk about the real estate here in this country. According to data released just yesterday, apartment purchases nationwide by people in their 20s and 30s came to around 28% last year, but that's lower than the average of 31% the year before, which is 2021. Can you explain the phenomenon?
The housing market actually skyrocketed until 2021, and it generated the riskiest part of the Korean economy by raising household debt up to almost 100% of GDP. And in the middle of rising housing price, the young people were forced to buy house by borrowing big money from banks because they thought it was the last chance to buy their houses in their lives. But all these have changed last year as Bank of Korea began to raise key interest rate. Domestic housing market is cooling quickly with lower housing price and much less transactions in housing market last year. And the higher interest rate gives larger burden to young household owners, and it decreases demands for house, particularly among young people.
Right, I can certainly tell that the atmosphere amongst the young people, especially in their 20s and 30s, is dramatically different in the new year. All right, thank you, Professor, for your time this morning. Hope to speak to you soon in the future.
Thank you for having me today.
The Korea Image Awards 2023 took place in Seoul on Wednesday. The awards recognize cultural envoys who contribute to promoting Korean culture worldwide. Our Shin Se-byuk reports.
The 19th edition of the annual Korea Image Awards took place in Seoul on Wednesday. Every year, individuals, events, and organizations that have contributed to enhancing South Korea's image are presented with awards by the Korea Image Communication Institute. Among some 400 opinion leaders in attendance was South Korean Foreign Minister Park Jin. And while sharing congratulatory remarks, he emphasized the importance of promoting South Korea's flourishing culture, saying a country's soft power is about a nation's prestige and branding. At the ceremony, the Korea Image Stepping Stone Award was presented to Korean actor Lee Jung-jae. Lee is an Emmy-winning actor best known for his role in the global drama sensation Squid Game. This year's awards also recognized Lee's directorial debut with the film Hunt.
I'm so honored and pleased that as a Korean I could play a part in presenting Korean content and culture to the world, although it may have been small.
Another honoree was former figure skater and 2010 Olympics gold medalist Kim Yuna. Kim was awarded the Korea Image Cornerstone Award for her contribution to enhancing the global image of Korea.
Quite some time has passed since retirement. Thank you for those who remember me and my past performances.
After her retirement in 2014, she has played an active role in various fields, particularly as an honorary ambassador for South Korea's bid to host the 2018 Winter Olympic Games. And last but not least, the Korea Image Budding Youth Award went to the 19-year-old swimmer and rising star Hwang Sun-woo. The award is dedicated to young talents under 20. Dubbed a record breaker, Hwang recently claimed his second straight top title in the men's 200-meter freestyle at the 2022 FINA World Championships in Melbourne, where he set both the Asian record and the competition record in the process.
I will strive to break my own record, to make better records and to bag better medals. I want to be remembered as the icon of the Korean swimming scene.
In parallel with the rising global popularity of Korean pop culture, expectations are high that Korean cultural envoys will continue to further enhance the nation's soft power. 신세벽, Arirang News.
Some people in the world are trying to go vegan for the month of January. It's a campaign called Veganuary. Our Kim Yuna explains further and shares some of the vegan options that you can enjoy here in South Korea.
Looking to change your diet in the new year? How about going vegan for 1 month? It's actually an international campaign with nearly 3 million people signed up. Dr. Tony Vanelli, head of communications at Veganuary, which organizes the campaign, says people are getting involved because they care about the environment.
So we know so much more now about the impact that animal agriculture is having on the planet, not just climate, which obviously gets a lot of attention, but on land use, which affects biodiversity.
It's a growing trend to care about the environment, health, and also animal welfare. In fact, the market for vegan products in South Korea has grown to $500 million, and globally it's at 20 billion. So South Korean companies are taking the challenge head on. The company Pulmuon, for example, has dived into the vegan restaurant business.
In central Gangnam, where tens of thousands of people live and work, this restaurant right here opened up last spring, serving only vegan dishes.
Customer favorites include the tofu cutlet and the plant-based bulgogi rice ball. Even the drinks on the menu are vegan approved. I asked the brand spokesperson about the secret behind the restaurant's popularity.
This restaurant aligns with the desire of younger consumers to spend money on their values, such as protecting the earth and tackling health issues.
Another South Korean company, CJ Jeiljedang, makes vegan versions of its best-selling items, one of which is dumplings. In the supermarket, vegan dumplings sell for about $4 a package. They're economical, so eating vegan is always an option. Dr. Vernelli says each person who tries going vegan contributes to a big difference to the environment.
Since we started 10 years ago, we've had over 2 million people take part, and we had scientists look at the impact that those 2 million people will have had. And together, it's a huge saving. So it's the carbon equivalent of over 1 million flights from London to Paris. So that's massive. So taken, as a community of people doing this, it really does have an impact.
김정실, 아리랑 뉴스.
For a look at the news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley joining us here in the studio. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Dami.
All right, we're starting in Paris this morning, where at least 6 people have been injured in a stabbing attack at a train station.
Well, that's right. The incident took place at Gare du Nord station in Paris at around 6 a.m. on Wednesday, local time. Now, the attacker used what authorities have described as a homemade blade. According to officials, the suspected attacker was stopped 1 minute after the first stabbing when off-duty officers fired multiple shots. Now, he has since been hospitalized with serious injuries. While the incident is being handled by criminal investigators, anti-terror police are evaluating whether they should take on the case. The attack saw train delays during morning rush hour at a station that typically sees some 700,000 travelers per day. Turning over to Russia's war in Ukraine, as Moscow has replaced its top commander. Russia's defense ministry announced on Wednesday that Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov would take over the top job. Gerasimov is known to have overseen recent attacks that targeted Ukraine's energy infrastructure and left millions without power. The shift means that former top commander Sergei Surovikin will be removed from the position and will serve as a deputy instead. Surovikin had only been in the role since October. Meanwhile, Russia claims to have made progress in East Ukraine. It says it has captured the town of Soledar, a claim that Ukraine denies. Now, the Greek government announced on Wednesday local time that its former king will be given a private burial. This comes as Greece's final king, Constantine II, died at the age of 82 on Tuesday after suffering from a stroke. Constantine's 9-year rule from 1964 was marked by a military coup in 1967 and then his exile after he attempted an unsuccessful counter-coup. After Greece became a democracy in 1974, its citizens voted to abolish the monarchy. Constantine was also later stripped of his Greek citizenship. As well as being Greece's final king, Constantine was also a cousin to Britain's King Charles III and an Olympic gold medalist in sailing. And finally, Elon Musk has broken a world record for the largest loss of personal wealth in history. According to Forbes figures, between November 2021 and December 2022, the Tesla CEO lost $182 billion. It was a year that saw Musk also lose his title as the world's richest person. Other sources hint his losses may have been even greater. Musk's loss is more than 3 times the previous record, when Japanese tech investor Masayoshi Son lost $58.6 billion in 2000. Now, the drop in personal wealth follows poor Tesla stock performance after Musk's $44 billion takeover of Twitter.
Good morning. Thursday will feel more like early spring rather than the heart of winter, with temperatures hovering about 10 degrees higher than average temperatures for the middle of January. Although the ultrafine dust level will remain high in the capital region for most of the day today. Then we'll notice skies getting gray with rain in the forecast from Jeju and Jeollanam-do province this afternoon, gradually spreading to rest of the country overnight. In mountainous regions on Jeju Island could see up to 200 millimeters of massive rainfall into tomorrow, and Seoul and inland regions seeing 5 to 40 millimeters. And that rain could fall at a rate of 30 to 50 millimeters an hour. And Jeju Island could see rain along with strong winds, so please be careful out there. And afternoon highs in Daegu will be at 15 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Gwangju seeing a high of 17, Jeju topping out at 19 degrees Celsius this afternoon. And tonight's rain will ease the dryness in the air in the East Coast and wash away the dust. Expect to see on and off rain or snow through Sunday, then winter temperatures return to the normal range next week. With that in mind, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
That's all we have for a New Day at Arirang. Do stay with us for more updates throughout the day. Thanks for watching.